The Sunday morning service at Grace Community Church in rural Tennessee had just ended when Pastor Jim noticed her. A young woman, maybe 25, sat alone in the last pew while families filed out into the autumn sunshine. Her hands trembled as she clutched a worn Bible, and dark bruises shadowed her neck despite the high collar she'd pulled up. "Miss, can I help you with something?" Pastor Jim approached slowly, keeping his voice gentle. She flinched at the sound, then looked up with eyes that had seen too much fear. I need sanctuary. He's going to find me. He always finds me." Before the pastor could respond, the church doors burst open. A man in an expensive suit stood silhouetted against the morning light, his jaw clenched with barely controlled rage. "Sarah, get in the car now." The woman, Sarah, went rigid. "No, not this time, Marcus. I said get in the car." Marcus took 3 steps forward, his polished shoes clicking against the tile floor. "You're embarrassing me in front of these people." Pastor Jim stepped between them, his heart hammering. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is a house of God." Marcus laughed, cold and sharp. "That's my wife. She has medication she needs. She gets confused, makes up stories." He reached past the pastor. "Come on, Sarah. Stop this nonsense." Sarah pressed herself against the back of the pew, her voice breaking into a desperate whisper that somehow carried through the sanctuary. "Please don't let him find me." The few remaining parishioners froze. Mrs. Henderson, who'd been gathering her grandchildren, pulled out her phone. Old Tom Fletcher, a Vietnam veteran who rarely spoke, moved quietly to stand beside the pastor. "She's not going anywhere with you," Tom said, his voice like gravel. "Not unless she wants to." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Stay out of this, old man. This is a family matter." "Family doesn't leave marks like that," Tom replied, nodding toward Sarah's neck. "I'm calling the sheriff." Marcus's composure cracked. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. My father owns half this county. I'll have this church condemned by next week." He turned to Sarah, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "And you know what happens when you make me chase you." That's when Mrs. Henderson's call connected. "Sheriff Morton, we have a situation at Grace Community. A woman seeking protection, and her husband is... Yes, that Marcus Caldwell, the judge's son." Marcus's face went pale with fury. "You're all going to regret this." He stabbed a finger towards Sarah. "I'm not done with you. You can't hide in a church forever." He stormed out, tires screeching as his Mercedes peeled away from the gravel parking lot. Sarah collapsed into sobs. Pastor Jim knelt beside her while Tom stood guard at the door. "What do we do?" the pastor asked quietly. "If his father really does have that kind of influence." Tom pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts. "I know some people, good people. They don't take kindly to men who hurt women." He stepped outside, the phone already ringing. 40 miles away, in a garage outside Nashville, Jake Hammer Morrison was underneath his Harley when his phone buzzed. Tom Fletcher's name lit up the screen. He hadn't heard from the old vet in 6 months. "Tom, everything all right?" "Need a favor, Hammer. Woman in trouble. Church in Millerton. Her husband's connected. Judge's son, mean as a snake, and she's got nowhere to go. Sheriff's on the way. But this guy's going to lawyer up and be back before nightfall with a court order or worse." Hammer slid out from under the bike, his mind already working. Tom Fletcher didn't call unless it was serious. "How bad?" "Bad enough she's begging for sanctuary in a church. Bad enough she's terrified he'll kill her if he gets her alone. I'll make some calls. How many you thinking?" "Enough to make a statement. Enough that money and connections don't matter." Hammer stood, wiping grease from his hands. "Give me 2 hours." The calls went out across Middle Tennessee, to the Iron Brotherhood MC, to the Veterans Riding Club, to the Christian Motorcyclists Association, to independent riders who'd heard of Hammer's reputation for helping women escape bad situations. The message was simple. Woman in danger, church in Millerton, come peaceful but come ready to stand. By noon, the rumble of motorcycles echoed through the Tennessee hills. Chapter 2. The Wall Forms. Sheriff Morton sat in Pastor Jim's office, his notebook open, frustration etched across his weathered face. "Mrs. Caldwell, I need you to understand something. I can arrest him for assault if you press charges, but his father will have him out in hours. And legally, as your husband, he has certain rights regarding your location and—" "Rights?" Sarah's voice rose, cracking with emotion. "He broke my wrist last month. He locked me in the basement for 2 days because I talked to a male cashier. What rights does that give him?" Sheriff Morton sighed heavily. "I'm not saying it's right, ma'am. I'm saying the law's complicated when it comes to married couples, especially when the other party has resources. Judge Caldwell is already calling my office. They're going to petition for a mental health evaluation, claim you're unstable and need to come home for treatment. That's what he always says." Sarah hugged herself, her voice hollow. "That I'm crazy, that I need help, that no one will believe me." The distant rumble of engines grew louder, pulling everyone's attention to the window. Pastor Jim peered through the blinds, and his eyes widened. "Dear Lord." Motorcycles poured into the church parking lot, one after another, chrome gleaming in the afternoon sun. Harleys, Indians, Triumphs, and Customs. Riders in leather vests with patches reading Iron Brotherhood MC, VRC, CMA, and dozens more. They parked in formation, engines cutting off in a wave of silence that somehow felt louder than the roar. A broad-shouldered man with silver streaking his beard dismounted first. His vest bore no club colors, just an American flag patch and a Purple Heart. He walked toward the church entrance with the quiet confidence of someone who'd faced worse than small-town corruption. Tom Fletcher met him at the door. "Hammer, didn't think you'd bring this many." "Word travels, Tom, especially when a man thinks his money makes him untouchable." Hammer's eyes scanned the parking lot, then the surrounding roads. "How's the woman?" "Scared. Sheriff's trying. But the husband's father is Judge Caldwell. They're already working legal angles." Hammer nodded slowly. "Then we make it harder for him to work those angles. Can't grab someone when there's witnesses. Lots of witnesses." More riders filed in. Some were grizzled veterans in their 60s. Others were younger, with families of their own. A few were women riders who'd heard the call and come to support one of their own. They gathered in the parking lot, not blocking access but making their presence impossible to ignore. Inside, Sheriff Morton watched through the window, torn between relief and worry. "I appreciate the support, but this could get complicated. Judge Caldwell isn't going to back down because of a motorcycle club." A woman rider, her gray hair in a long braid, stepped forward. "Sheriff, I'm Linda Kowalski, licensed social worker, 20 years. I've worked domestic violence cases in 3 states. She handed him a business card. "I'm here as a witness and advocate. Everything by the book." Another rider approached, older, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Robert Chen, attorney. Pro bono. If Mrs. Caldwell wants legal representation, she's got it." Sheriff Morton blinked in surprise. You ride?" Robert smiled slightly. "Weekends and good causes. Mrs. Caldwell, I can file an emergency protective order within the hour. It won't stop your husband permanently, but it gives us legal ground to keep him away while we build a case." Sarah looked around at the growing crowd of strangers who'd dropped everything to help her. Tears streamed down her face. "Why? Why would you all do this for someone you don't know?" An older woman rider stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Because 20 years ago I was you, hiding in a shelter, terrified. Some bikers I'd never met showed up and stood watch until I could get safe. I'm paying it forward." Tom Fletcher put a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "No one fights alone, not on our watch." Outside, more motorcycles arrived. The parking lot was full, so they lined the road leading to the church, forming a corridor of chrome and leather. Hammer stood at the center, coordinating with his phone. "Keep it peaceful. We're witnesses, not vigilantes. Anyone gets aggressive, we de-escalate. Anyone breaks the law, we let the sheriff handle it. Clear?" A chorus of agreement rumbled through the crowd. At 3 p.m., a black BMW pulled up, stopping at the edge of the motorcycle line. Marcus Caldwell stepped out, flanked by 2 men in suits, lawyers by the look of them. He surveyed the scene with barely contained fury. "What is this? Some kind of rally?" Marcus's voice dripped with contempt. "This is private property. I have every right to speak with my wife." Hammer stepped forward, hands visible and relaxed. "Church property, actually, open to the public during posted hours. We're exercising our right to peaceful assembly." "I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to the sheriff." Marcus tried to push past, but the wall of riders didn't budge. Not threatening, just immovable. Sheriff Morton emerged from the church. "Mr. Caldwell, your wife has requested no contact. I suggest you respect that while we sort this out legally." One of the lawyers spoke up, his voice smooth and practiced. "Sheriff, Mrs. Caldwell is under psychiatric care. She's missed medication appointments and her doctor has expressed concern for her welfare. We have documentation." Robert Chen appeared beside the sheriff, briefcase in hand. "I'm Mrs. Caldwell's legal counsel. Any medical documentation will need to be reviewed by an independent physician, and for the record, coerced psychiatric treatment as a means of control is well documented in domestic abuse cases." The lawyer's smile faltered. Marcus's face flushed red. "This is insane. She's my wife. I have rights." "You have the right to petition the court," Robert interrupted calmly, "which you're welcome to do, but you don't have the right to access this property against the wishes of the owners or to contact someone who's requested protection." "My father will hear about this." Marcus's voice rose. "Do you know who I am?" "Yeah," Hammer said quietly. "We know exactly who you are, and we know what you did to her. The bruises don't lie." Marcus took a step forward, his hands clenching. Two riders shifted position, not threatening but ready. The lawyer grabbed Marcus's arm. "Not here, not with all these witnesses and cameras." Cameras. Hammer noticed them then. Several riders had phones out, recording everything. Marcus jabbed a finger toward the church. "This isn't over, Sarah. You can't hide forever." He turned to his lawyers. "File everything. Protective custody, mental health evaluation, whatever it takes. I want her back home by tomorrow." He stormed back to his BMW, tires spitting gravel as he sped away. The riders remained, silent sentinels against the fading afternoon light. Chapter 3. The Long Night. As darkness fell, the bikers organized shifts. Some went for coffee runs. Others brought sleeping bags, preparing to stay through the night. Pastor Jim opened the fellowship hall, overwhelmed by the support. Sarah sat in a back room, wrapped in a borrowed jacket, while Linda Kowalski explained her options. "You can stay here tonight, but long-term you'll need a safe house. I have contacts with a network specifically for women escaping abuse. They can place you in another state if necessary, with job training and counseling." "Another state?" Sarah's voice was small. "I've never lived anywhere but Tennessee. I know it's scary, but Marcus has resources. If you stay local, he'll find ways to get to you. His father's influence extends throughout this county." Robert Chen sat across from them, papers spread on the table. "I've filed the emergency protective order. Judge Harrison, not Marcus's father, granted it. Marcus has to stay at least 500 feet away, but Sarah, we need to be realistic. He'll violate it. Men like him always do. The question is whether we can build a strong enough case for criminal charges before he does something worse." "I have photos," Sarah said suddenly. "On my phone, every time he hurt me, I documented it. I was too scared to tell anyone, but I took pictures." Linda and Robert exchanged looks. "That's evidence," Robert said carefully. "Strong evidence. May I see?" Sarah pulled out her phone with shaking hands. The photos were devastating, bruises in various stages of healing. A split lip, finger marks on her arms, a black eye, timestamps going back 18 months. "Why didn't you come forward before?" Linda asked gently. "I tried. Once. I went to the police in the next county. The officer called Marcus's father before I even finished my statement. Judge Caldwell showed up personally, told them I was mentally unstable, showed them a prescription for anxiety medication that Marcus forced me to take. They let me go home with him." Sarah's voice broke. "He punished me for 3 days, said if I ever tried again, he'd have me committed, that his father could make me disappear into a psychiatric facility and no one would question it." Robert's jaw tightened. "That's illegal coercion, abuse of power. If we can prove Judge Caldwell actively interfered with a police investigation—" "It's a big if," Linda warned. "Taking down a sitting judge requires ironclad evidence and external investigators. The State Attorney General's office, maybe the FBI." Outside, Hammer coordinated with Sheriff Morton. "We've got riders coming in from Kentucky and Arkansas. Word's spreading on the forums. This has become bigger than one woman." Sheriff Morton rubbed his face tiredly. "I appreciate what you're doing, but Judge Caldwell has already filed complaints. Harassment, unlawful assembly, intimidation. He's trying to force me to clear you out." "Are we breaking any laws?" "No, but he's got pressure points I don't. My department's budget goes through county commissioners. Half of them owe their positions to the Caldwell family." "So you're saying we're on our own once the pressure gets too high?" Sheriff Morton met his eyes. "I'm saying I'll do what I can for as long as I can, but I've got deputies with families, jobs on the line, you understand?" Hammer nodded. "We understand, and we're not going anywhere." At midnight, 3 sheriff's vehicles pulled up, not Morton's department, but from the neighboring county. A stone-faced deputy approached. "We've received reports of a disturbance. Going to need everyone to disperse." Hammer stepped forward. "We're peacefully assembled on church property with the pastor's permission. What's the disturbance?" "Noise complaints, public nuisance." "From who?" "The nearest house is a quarter-mile away, and Mrs. Henderson, who lives there, is inside the church with us." The deputy's expression didn't change. "I'm going to need to speak with Sarah Caldwell. We have a court order for a welfare check." Robert Chen appeared. "I'm her attorney. That order was issued after my protective order was granted. It's invalid, and any welfare check can be conducted with her legal counsel present." "That's not how this works." "That's exactly how this works." Robert's voice was calm steel. "Unless you have a warrant for her arrest, which you don't, she's under no obligation to speak with you. And any attempt to remove her without proper cause will result in federal civil rights charges." The deputies conferred. One made a phone call. After 10 minutes, they drove away. Inside the church, Sarah watched through the window, amazed. "They're really going to stay? All night?" Pastor Jim nodded. "They gave their word. In their world, that means something." Dawn broke cold and grey. The bikers had rotated shifts through the night, keeping watch. Coffee and donuts arrived courtesy of a local bakery owner who'd heard what was happening and wanted to help. Then, at 7 a.m., the media arrived. News vans from Nashville, Knoxville, even Memphis. Reporters with cameras, drawn by social media posts showing dozens of bikers protecting a church. The story was too good to ignore. Working-class riders versus wealthy, connected family. A woman seeking sanctuary. The visual of motorcycles surrounding a small rural church. Hammer groaned. "This is going to complicate things." But Robert Chen smiled. "Actually, this might be exactly what we need. Judge Caldwell's power comes from operating in shadows. Sunshine is disinfectant." A reporter approached. "Can you tell us what's happening here?" Hammer chose his words carefully. "Her woman came to this church seeking help. She's a victim of domestic violence. We're here to ensure she stays safe while legal processes work themselves out." "Is it true her husband is Judge Caldwell's son?" "I can't comment on specific identities, but I can say that abuse happens in every community, regardless of wealth or status. And when someone asks for help, good people answer." The interviews spread across morning news. By noon, the story had gone viral. Bikers Sanctuary trended on social media. Donations poured into a legal fund Robert set up for Sarah's case. And in his office, Judge Caldwell watched the news coverage with growing horror, his carefully maintained reputation crumbling in real time. Chapter 4. Breaking Point and Breakthrough. Judge Caldwell arrived at the church at 2 p.m. alone in his Lincoln Town car. No lawyers, no deputies. He walked through the line of motorcycles, his face ashen, and approached Pastor Jim. "I need to speak with my son's wife, privately." "With respect, Your Honor, she doesn't want to see you." Pastor Jim stood firm despite his nerves. "I'm not here to intimidate anyone. I'm here to—" The judge's voice cracked. "I'm here to help." Robert Chen appeared. "Anything you say to Mrs. Caldwell happens with counsel present." Judge Caldwell nodded slowly. "I understand." They gathered in the pastor's office, Sarah, Robert, Linda, Pastor Jim, and the judge. Sarah sat as far from him as possible, her body language screaming fear. Judge Caldwell looked at her bruised face and something broke in his expression. "I didn't know, I swear to God, I didn't know it was this bad." "You knew enough," Sarah said quietly. "You helped him cover it up. You silenced me when I tried to report it." "I thought—" The judge's hands trembled. "I thought you were exaggerating, that it was normal marital conflict. Marcus told me you were unstable. that you made things up for attention. I believed my son." He looked down. "I was wrong. Terribly, unforgivably wrong." Robert leaned forward. "If you want to help now, here's how. You recuse yourself from anything involving this case. You cooperate with an investigation into your interference with that police report. And you don't fight the protective order or the divorce proceedings." "Divorce?" The judge's head snapped up. "I want a divorce," Sarah said, her voice gaining strength. "I want my freedom. I want my life back." Judge Caldwell closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. "Marcus needs help, real help, psychiatric treatment, anger management, accountability. I enabled him his whole life, fixed his problems, made his messes disappear. I created this monster." He looked at Sarah. "I can't undo what's been done, but I can stop making it worse. You'll have your divorce, uncontested, and I'll make sure Marcus gets the treatment he needs, even if I have to commit him involuntarily." "Why should I believe you?" Sarah asked. "Because my career is over anyway." The judge gestured toward the window where reporters still lingered. "This is national news. I'll be lucky to avoid criminal charges, but maybe I can do one right thing before it all comes down." Over the next week, everything moved quickly. Judge Caldwell kept his word, recusing himself and cooperating with state investigators. Marcus was arrested attempting to violate the protective order. He'd been caught on security cameras stalking the church. With his father's political cover gone, other victims came forward. 3 ex-girlfriends with similar stories, a former employee with an assault complaint that had been buried. The district attorney, finally free from political pressure, built a case. Marcus faced multiple felony charges. Sarah moved to a safe house in Georgia, beginning trauma counseling and job training. Linda stayed in touch, helping her navigate the rebuilding process. The bikers returned to their regular lives, but the story spread through riding communities nationwide. When another call came in, a woman in Oregon, a veteran in Texas, a teenager in Florida, riders answered. The network grew, informal but effective. 6 months later, Pastor Jim received a letter from Sarah. She'd finished her cosmetology certification. She had a job, a small apartment, and for the first time in years, peace. She included a photo. Sarah smiling, genuinely smiling, surrounded by her graduating class. At the bottom she'd written, "Tell the riders thank you. Tell them they didn't just save my life. They showed me it was worth saving." Pastor Jim posted the photo in the fellowship hall next to the newspaper clipping from that week. The headline read, "Bikers form wall of protection for abuse victim. Spark national conversation." Hammer came by on a Sunday ride, saw the photo and smiled. "That's what it's about," he said to Tom Fletcher. "One person, one stand, makes all the difference." Tom nodded, his old eyes distant. "Learned that in Vietnam. You don't leave people behind, ever." Outside, motorcycles gleamed in the sunshine. The rumble of engines faded down country roads, carrying riders back to their lives. But the memory remained of a terrified woman's whisper and the army of strangers who heard it and answered. Not because it was easy, not because it was profitable, but because when someone cries for help, you don't ask their last name or check their bank account. You just show up, and you stand.